Those periods has been obviously after I left. I got to watch, we were talking about video work with Rick before we started this evening, but it was amazing what the power of video in the hands of someone like James O'Keefe, and how it all gets edited and put into the what Herbert Marcuse called the flesh-eating machine of modern media. And for whatever reason, and I've had a lot of time to think about it looking from outside, Acorn didn't survive that activity. And part of it was a failure of perception, and part of it was a failure of will. But in looking at global grassroots and organizing around the world, and how you rebuild organizations like Acorn International and membership-based organizations of the poor, from those lessons, there are quite a lot of lessons, no matter how painful, you can learn from watching what happened to Acorn, both as it grew and as it died. So that's, you know, sort of in 25 words or more, what these books are about is sort of an amalgamation of organizing experience, both here in the United States, specifically in New Orleans, and unfortunately these are periods of disasters. I never started as an anti-war organizer, then organized welfare recipients in Massachusetts and Arkansas, and then organized communities, and later organized unions. Along with those communities, I never thought I'd have to be a post-disaster organizer. And now with, you know, the tsunami in Indonesia, the problems in Japan, the, you know, earthquakes here and this problem there, unfortunately, it turns out this is part of what becomes grist in the mill of community organizations as well, is the right to return to places like Alabama, or what neighborhoods don't get redeveloped in Springfield, Mass, where I started with welfare rights because there was a tornado there, and should they develop? And these are critical questions in times of little resources. So that became an appendix as sort of what you can all learn about the lessons of disaster that we learned the hard way in New Orleans. You know, we used to say when I was with Acorn, the most expensive organizing program you can ever run turns out to be a volunteer program. The problem about having 10,000 volunteers come help us rebuild New Orleans is they all had to have Tyvek suits, gloves, you know, something over their feet, tools. So yeah, it's a lift. So saying all that, I wanted to actually stop and, you know, talk, as I warned you that I would, about whatever's on your mind, or any questions you have about these books, or in fact, sort of my sponsor here is Mary Ellen Hayden, who's the office director, head organizer, I'm not sure all the titles, for Action Now, which used to be called,
it's Action United.
Action United, whatever. You know, I'll learn. To me, it's still Acorn with a different shirt. Luckily, she you know, was wearing both her Action United and her Acorn button earlier today. Oh, okay, there you go.
She's an original Acorn member.
Well, that's a good place to meet people, and yeah, there'll be new things to come. So what used to be Acorn in Pittsburgh is now Action United in Pittsburgh, and if anybody doesn't know what they're doing now, it's obviously an impressive piece of work. But they're one of the, to my count, of when I left, there were organizations with Acorn in 38 states. Now I think there are perhaps 8 or 9 of them that are alive at some semblance of health, or at least limping along. And Pennsylvania is without a doubt one of the stronger of those residual organizations that was able to sort of Phoenix-like pick themselves up and
do you think that's because we're such a union-based state, possibly?
No, I think it's because there are resources. Okay. There's almost a direct relationship to where there's extensive external money that could buffet the transition after that period. So Pennsylvania, California, New York, those places easily survived at some level, even if smaller. And then some of the places with deep historical bases like Arkansas and New Orleans, where the organization really started, and clearly, New Orleans, particularly because the Katrina work is gold-plated in many ways. I mean, at the worst of the attacks on Acorn, even the very conservative newspapers were still defending, well, this is our Acorn here in New Orleans, because the recovery, you know, sort of separated the city in a different way. You either were running or you were staying, and Acorn was one of many organizations that led the way, particularly among African Americans and lower income people, to stay. And I wasn't born or raised in New Orleans. I went to high school there, so it wasn't uncomfortable for me to move back and with Acorn many years later. But what I say now is, after Katrina, you can't leave. You know, I always thought, well, maybe one day I'll go back west or whatever. Well, after Katrina, that'll be where they put dirt in my face. You know, it just you know, because that is sort of a bright line test. And other questions? Any questions? Or whatever is on people's minds. I was talking earlier, was asking about what occupies like here in Pittsburgh. Clearly, that's been something that's been associated with some of what the sentiment behind Acorn was in some places. Do you have other questions?
Yeah. What are you focusing on? Just helping epicenters where a disaster comes about and allowing those that are disenfranchised to be able to go back to their homes? Is that what you're? Is that
No, I
your
really
heart?
avoid that.
Okay.
But
So what is on your
but
heart?
what happens is, because of the New Orleans experience, when there's disasters, we do get people reach out for us in some of these countries and in some of those cities like Springfield and Montgomery and Birmingham and whatever. And that's part of why I wrote that in the book, and we do offer some assistance. But as an organizer,
Right.
mainly what I do is organize in these 13 countries. And it's around campaigns, it's around
Okay.
membership organizations of the poor, much like I did with Acorn in the U.S.
What do you feel about, for me right now, I'm middle class, going down, 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 down because of the strife in the economy. I've been a widow since I'm 41, I'm 50 now. My son's 19. I own a home in a very good part of Lawrenceville, and I don't get any of the help that the parts that get the grant monies do get. And I just am going deeper, deeper, deeper into the realm of the poverty realm, but not getting any assistance. I'm not crying, I'm just saying there's a lot of people in this situation.
Yeah.
And so are you just going to focus on helping the totally impoverished, or or do you have no intention on even grasping the edge of this star that's coming through with the economy? And
So here in the United States, you know, I helped start a project in Phoenix since I left Acorn to try to deal with foreclosures, which affects exactly the kind of people you're talking about, who are part of the, you know, millions of folks that are underwater in terms of value.
And the lawyers will say, we can get your mortgage company to give you a fixed rate, and they tell you to stop paying the mortgage, and then you go into Act 91, and then you don't know that there's all this small print that's not correct. All right, so
No, it's
I
been
do
a very
have
difficult
real
project.
angry about that.
No, well, I mean, that anger is shared.
I rose above it, but there are people that don't. And they are in the middle class, and they get dragged into poverty because of shysters. That's my point of view.
Well, I think
Is that a euphemism for capitalism?
Yes, and I'm reading Karl Marx now.
Uh-oh.
And I claim myself a Republican, but I changed it to American Independence Party. I liked Arnold and Maria's household until the little thing that went on there, but I'm being humorous.
Yeah, and I don't know.
I'm having a dry. I'm allowed. I'm 50. I'm going to be 51. Okay. I think I've earned it.
that's right. Well, I'm just trying to keep up here.
All right. Sorry.
But
That's all
on the
my
housing thing, I mean, I think we unfortunately could see it coming because we were negotiating with most of the big subprimes. You know, we were trying to settle campaigns that were involved with one of these subprimes, all the ones from New Century, which was the first one to go bankrupt, to Option One owned by H&R Block, and you know, AmeriQuest, and one after another, including Countrywide. And we were looking at loan portfolios where more than half of the loan portfolios in New Century were what are called stated income loans, and you know, we actually